And now I pray, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. First of all, I'd like to thank Pastor Beechler and the leaders of Mount Calvary for inviting me to be here as a speaker for Food for the Poor. I know you've had other speakers in years past, and many of you have been supporting Food for the Poor over these past few years. And to you, I again say, thank you. Today's Holy Gospel speaks about being saved. Peter stepped out of the boat, and the text says, when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. We Lutherans know a lot about salvation. It was his quest for salvation that led Martin Luther to search the Scriptures to find peace with God. We Lutherans know how we are saved. We know how we're saved. That is by God's grace alone, through faith in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross to atone for our sins and rose again to bring us eternal life. And we also know what we are saved from. If you were confirmed in the Lutheran Church in 7th or 8th grade, you probably had to memorize Martin Luther's explanation of the second article of the Creed, where he says that Jesus Christ has redeemed me, a lost and condemned person, purchased and won me from all sins, from death, and from the power of the devil. That's what we're saved from: sin, death, and the power of the devil. But then if we go on and ask, what are we saved for? Then we may hesitate a little bit and not be quite so clear. But as we go on through Luther's explanation of the second article, he tells us what we're saved for. He says, all this Christ has done, that I may be his own, live under him in his kingdom, and serve him. That's what we're saved for. Being Christ's own people, living under him and serving him. But that raises another question. How can we serve Jesus who we do not see? And Jesus answers that question for us in the Gospel of Matthew, in Matthew chapter 25, in his last teaching to his disciples before his arrest and crucifixion. Jesus describes the scene of the final judgment, and he pictures the Lord saying to those on his right, those who have been saved, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and give you something to eat, or see you thirsty and give you a drink? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. This is now the 51st Lutheran congregation I've come to as a speaker for Food for the Poor. Soon after I retired from the parish ministry in 2011, after having served as a Lutheran pastor for 42 years, I received an invitation to become a speaker for Food for the Poor. But before I accepted that invitation, I wanted to check this charity out. And the more I learned about it, the more impressed I was by it. I learned, first of all, that Food for the Poor is very definitely a Christian organization. It's not some fly-by-night group, but it's been in existence since 1982. We've served 32 years. And what also impressed me was that it is an ecumenical ministry. On any given Sunday, Catholic priests would go to the Catholic churches, Episcopal priests to Episcopal churches, Missouri Synod Lutheran pastors to our churches, ELCA pastors to theirs, Methodist ministers to theirs, speaking to people and inviting them to become partners with the poor through this ministry. Well, what really impressed me the most was when I learned that of all the donations received by Food for the Poor, 95% of them go to the projects for which they are given. Only 5% is used for overhead and fundraising. And among charities, that is a very good percentage. So in 2011, I became a speaker for Food for the Poor. And last August, I took my first mission trip to the country of Haiti with Food for the Poor speakers. And there I saw with my own eyes almost indescribable poverty. Poverty unlike anything we have here in the United States. And I also saw the good work done by Food for the Poor, orphanages, homes for the aging, a home for the developmentally disabled, housing projects, schools, and feeding stations that are supported by the Ministry of Food for the Poor. Back during the 1980s, I was a pastor in Georgia. And one year, around 83 or 84, I can't remember exactly which year, we suffered a severe drought in Georgia, something that you folks here in California are experiencing right now. Unlike us up in Oregon, I live near Salem, Oregon, where it rains every day from the middle of September to the middle of April. But this drought in Georgia was so severe that crops were dying in the fields. Farmers did not have enough grain to feed their cattle. Meanwhile, that very year, farmers in Ohio and Indiana were enjoying bountiful harvests. Apparently the jet stream that normally dips down did not dip down that year. It went straight across and dumped a lot of needed rain in the Midwest and none in Georgia. But then that summer, around the middle of August, a miracle took place. Farmers all across Ohio and Indiana filled their trucks with their abundant grain and drove down to Georgia and gave it, didn't sell it, they gave it to farmers in Georgia who had so little. When a TV reporter asked one Ohio farmer why he was doing this, he said, well, we had so much more than we needed, and these folks have nothing. It just seemed like the Christian thing to do. And because it was the Christian thing to do, he just did it. There was an article in Time magazine about a year ago about some architectural students in Auburn University who are building very inexpensive homes for the poor in Alabama. And they proudly said they could build a house for a family for $20,000. Food for the Poor does better than that. We can build a house for a family in Nicaragua, or Guatemala, or Haiti, or Jamaica for $3,200, $3,200. They're not big houses, about as big, I imagine, from that post back there over to that wall and about up to here. 2 rooms and a bathroom with running water and flush toilets. But they're far better than the tents or the shanties the people were living in before they received their homes. In August of last year, I saw some of those houses when I was in Haiti. We landed early in the morning and went to the Food for the Poor headquarters in Port-au-Prince. There we helped serve food to several hundred people who were waiting patiently for their turn to go through the line of a food feeding station. They had buckets that they were filled with a scoop of rice and a scoop of chicken stew. And when they saw us 19 white men all wearing Food for the Poor t-shirts, standing there watching what was going on, they began to sing. And they don't sing the way we Lutherans sing. We just stand there and hold the book and sing. They dance and sway and move around. They really get with it. And they kept singing this one refrain over and over and over. And our interpreter then told us what they were singing. Thank you, God, for our friends from America who bring us food so we can live. At that moment, the words of Jesus really became real to me. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. At 4:53 p.m. on Tuesday, January 12th, in the year 2010, a magnitude 7 earthquake struck the country of Haiti, causing almost indescribable damage. We've seen pictures of it on TV. The pictures don't tell the story that seeing it with my own eyes did. The United Nations estimates that over 1 million people were left homeless following that earthquake. When we were there last summer, that number had been reduced to about 400,000, and now they say it's less than 300,000. That's still a lot of people every day. it got to be 99 degrees and 99% humidity, not humility, humidity. And those people are living in tents, and every day in the tropics it just pours a downpour. In the summer, heavy rain. And I know in the summer in California you don't get much rain. But if you go camping in a tent sometime up in Oregon where I live, I can guarantee you know how much money, no matter how much you pay for your tent, you're still going to get wet when it rains. But those people have been blessed by the ministry of Food for the Poor. One of the high points of our trip was a visit to a village of about 40 homes, appropriately named the Village of Hope. Homes built by Food for the Poor. The village is off the power grid, but Food for the Poor has built solar power collectors that collect the solar energy and convert it to electricity. We in America worry about running out of oil and gas. They're never going to run out of sunshine in Haiti. The sun shines brightly almost every day of the year. It provides them with electricity for a few hours a day. And then there is a central well that provides every house in the Village of Hope with 35 gallons of water a day. Now for you and me, that may not seem like much water. When my kids were teenagers still living at home, I know they spent at least 35 gallons in every shower they ever took because our hot water tank, a 30-gallon tank, was empty by the time they got out of the shower. But you may recall from the news that following the earthquake in Haiti, the disease of cholera, a waterborne disease, spread as an epidemic through the country. And United Nations figures indicate that over 680,000 people contracted the disease of cholera, and about 8,500 people died from that. Believe me, for the people of Haiti, 35 gallons of pure, fresh water a day is a gift from heaven. Visiting that village was an experience I will never forget. A real echo of Jesus' words, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. I've come to you today to invite you to become partners with the poor. By supporting the poor in Haiti, in Guatemala, Nicaragua, Jamaica, and Dominican Republic, all these countries, through the ministry of Food for the Poor. In your bulletin is a brochure that describes the ministry of Food for the Poor. If you take it out, please. If you open it up, it describes the various projects that we have and what your gift will support in these projects. It shows the countries where we operate, minister, and shows some of the children who we help. But this brochure, if you fold it by the yellow line in the middle and tear it off, it becomes just what? An offering envelope. If you would like to make a gift to Food for the Poor today, you can place it in this envelope, and I'll be standing in the church entranceway next to a basket. You can place it in there, and I'll send it back to Food for the Poor through a priority mail envelope. If you don't have money with you today but would like to make a gift, it's a postpaid envelope. You can drop it in, and even if you give cash, print your name and address on the envelope so Food for the Poor can thank you for your gift, which is tax deductible. Some people like to be monthly supporters of Food for the Poor, and several people after your 8 o'clock service told me they have been supporting Food for the Poor on a monthly basis since their speaker was here a couple of years ago. And to those of you who are doing that, I again say thank you. In every church I go to, I always say, my first priority in my own giving is to my own congregation. When I retired, my wife and I joined a different church. We joined Calvary Lutheran Church in Salem, Oregon. And right about this time, my wife will be placing our offering envelope, which I wrote out yesterday morning before I hopped on the plane to come down here to Calvary Lutheran Church. But after that, my wife and I prayerfully considered what other missions and ministries do we want to support. We support a Lutheran Latino ministry in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, and on a monthly basis, we also support Food for the Poor. I was at St. John Lutheran Church down in Hammond, California 2 weeks ago. And I concluded my sermon by saying to them, I'd like to invite you to consider building a house for a family through Food for the Poor. And then I told him $3,200 is not really all that much money. All it takes is 32 people giving $100, or 64 people each giving $50, or 128 people giving $25, or any combination thereof. And on Thursday morning, I received an email from the pastor of St. John's, and he said, we're going to take you up on that challenge, and we're going to build a house for a family. That's the kind of mission and ministry that Jesus has in mind when he says, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I needed clothing, and you clothed me. And when God's people ask, Lord, when do we see you in need of any of these? Jesus will simply say, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Amen. Now may the peace of God that passes all understanding stand guard over your hearts and minds, keeping you secure in Christ Jesus through life everlasting.